Hailey, you're only good at writing trash online, while your sister is out there doing something real. Everyone in my family thinks Chloe walks on water. I was just the girl who got lucky to be her sister. The walls of my tiny off campus room trapped the heat like it was some cruel joke. I peeled my back from the sticky leather chair and rubbed my temples. The scholarship portal blinked at me, a cruel reminder that I had less than a week to submit my application. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as a bead of sweat rolled down my spine. It wasn't just the heat. I hadn't been home in over a year, not since I published my viral piece about hidden family abuse under a pen name. Veritas Gray, the byline had read. An anonymous whistle in a storm of curated holiday cards and flawless family portraits. My inbox still carried the echo of women saying, "Thank you for putting words to what I couldn't." But I couldn't even take credit, at least not publicly. The phone buzzed. Mom, of course. I hesitated. Let it ring? But I already knew better. If I didn't pick up, she'd just call again. Or worse, Chloe would. "Hi, Mom," I answered, trying not to sound like someone who still slept on a twin bed surrounded by used textbooks. "Hailey, sweetie, it's been so long. How's school? Still top of your class?" I could hear the smile in her voice, plastic-wrapped and polished. She always started sweet. That was the thing with Meredith. She wielded pleasantness like a butcher held a cleaver. "It's going fine," I replied, keeping my voice flat. "Just working on a scholarship application." A pause. Then her voice took on that disappointed but trying to be patient tone. "You know, Chloe's wedding is next weekend. I hope you haven't forgotten. Your father and I would be thrilled to have you back. We already told everyone you'd be there." I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen. I wasn't planning on going. Silence. Then, sharp and quiet. "Why not?" "I have a lot on my plate. This application, it's competitive and it's due next week. Plus, you know things between me and Chloe." "Hailey," she cut me off. "It's her wedding. We are a family. Families show up." I swallowed. Even when showing up means pretending nothing ever happened? There was a moment where I could feel the mask fall from her voice like a trapdoor clicking open. "Then I guess we're done paying your tuition." I blinked as if the words had punched me in the face. "You what?" Her voice didn't waver. "We've supported you for years. Rent, books, tuition, meals. It's time you showed us a little gratitude. This family has a reputation, one that Chloe has worked very hard to uphold." My fingers curled into a fist on the desk. "So now it's conditional? You'll pay, but only if I play dress up at a wedding where I'm expected to smile next to people who covered for Chloe's lies?" "You will smile," she snapped. "Or you will be on your own." The line clicked off. I stared at the screen. My scholarship draft sat untouched, the blinking cursor now feeling like a metronome counting down my dignity. My chest tightened. Going back meant walking into a house built on denial. It meant toasting the golden child while pretending I hadn't exposed the rot underneath. It meant smiling next to the sister who once locked me in a room and told me she'd tell Mom I was hitting myself again if I didn't shut up. But not going meant losing everything I'd worked for. No tuition meant no degree. No degree meant no future. The college didn't care if your mom was emotionally manipulative or your sister a gaslighter. All they cared about was the invoice. I looked at the half-written essay and the flickering cursor. I guess I'm going home. I walked through that door and every glance told me I wasn't wanted here. The air inside the old house was thicker than the June heat outside. It smelled like vanilla candles and freshly polished wood, all curated to feel like warmth, but it reeked of performance. The walls were covered in soft beige paint, framed quotes about family and gratitude hung perfectly straight, and the foyer table was overflowing with Chloe's engagement photos. Her smiling face gleamed from every angle, her white teeth catching the light like she was a toothpaste ad. I stood awkwardly just inside, backpack still on, scanning for somewhere to put my shoes. No one offered to help. No one looked up. A year ago, at a dinner not unlike this one, Mom had clinked her wine glass and declared, Chloe will be taking over the charity from me. She has the heart and the style. Hailey, maybe you should consider a more stable path. Something like HR, question mark. I'd smiled politely, then cried in the bathroom until the mascara bled down to my collarbones. Now I watched Chloe descend the stairs, her designer dress fluttering as if there were wind indoors. Hailey, she sang out like a performer spotting a fan from the stage. Oh my God, I didn't even know you were coming. Her hug was cold and brief. Her perfume stung of citrus and competition. I didn't know either, I muttered. Mom appeared behind her, arms wide, teeth flashing. Sweetheart, you look tired. Are you eating enough? That little bookstore job, does it pay enough for proper meals? I offered a stiff smile. I manage. Oh, but Chloe's trip to Italy was transformative. She cooed, looping her arm through my sister's. The vineyards, the history. And did you know she found the dress of her dreams in Florence? Real lace, hand-stitched. A one-of-a-kind piece. Chloe's face flushed in delight. And Lorenzo said I looked like royalty. I nodded, hands folded in front of me like a guest at a funeral. Across the room, Aunt Ruth stood near the punch bowl, watching quietly. She didn't say much at these things, but she'd always been the only adult in our family who treated me like I was more than an accessory to Chloe. She wandered closer and said softly, "You were always the quiet, clever one, Hailey." Before I could answer, Mom swooped in like a bird of prey. "Ruth, did you know Chloe raised over $100,000 for the animal sanctuary? She's just so passionate about causes. She even wrote the press release herself." I blinked. That press release? I remembered writing it late one night 2 years ago, with coffee-stained fingers and red, tired eyes. Chloe had asked for just a few words, and I had given her paragraphs. I even photoshopped the numbers. Now it was her accomplishment, her legacy, her truth. And my voice? Disappeared, erased, rewritten under someone else's name. Dinner passed in a fog. I barely touched my food, even as Chloe described the catered menu for the wedding. Lobster, scallops, champagne flown in from France. No one asked what I was doing for the summer. No one asked about school. They only asked, "Still working at that bookstore?" And then turned back to Chloe before I answered. Later that night, I climbed the stairs to the room that used to be mine. The posters were gone, replaced with fresh white paint and "Live, Laugh, Love" in cursive vinyl over the dresser. I dropped my bag, sat cross-legged on the bed, and pulled out my laptop. The screen lit up, revealing the last draft of the blog. Veritas Gray had been silent for weeks. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the keys, then I started typing. You asked me to smile. Let me show you how sharp mine can be. Aaron didn't recognize me at first, but I knew exactly who he was. He stepped through the sliding glass doors of the wedding hotel with the ease of someone who didn't have to worry about being noticed. Tall, clean-cut, charcoal gray suit crisp even after travel. He looked like someone you'd trust with your secrets and maybe your spare key. I watched from across the marble-tiled lobby, perched on a low velvet bench like I was part of the furniture. My stomach twisted, not out of nerves, but recognition. He'd once been a single paragraph in one of my earliest posts as Veritas Gray. I'd called him the kind stranger who noticed, a man on a train who'd asked if I was all right when I was 19 and had tear stains on my sleeves and bruises hidden under foundation. He never pried. He just sat a little closer and left a pack of gum on the seat next to mine when he got off. Now here he was, older, more polished, but still Aaron. Chloe squealed when she saw him. "Aaron, you made it." She wrapped him in a showy hug before stepping back with her perfect teeth on full display. "Everyone, this is Aaron Leary, best man and best friend to my future husband. Isn't he dashing?" There were polite nods and champagne flutes lifted in greeting. "And this," she said, gesturing to me like she was introducing the houseplant, "is my sister Hailey. You probably haven't heard of her. She keeps busy with bookstore stuff." Aaron turned to me. His expression was neutral. I braced myself. "Nice to meet you," he said, offering a hand. I took it briefly. "Likewise." Chloe, already distracted, spun to greet the next guest. Aaron lingered. "I think I saw you helping with the seating chart earlier," he said. "I guess I'm versatile," I murmured. His brow lifted slightly. "You seem familiar." I shrugged. "I get that sometimes." Later that evening, I was helping refill place cards in the reception hall when I felt someone behind me. Aaron. He was holding 2 glasses of water and extended one without a word. "Thanks," I said, not meeting his gaze. "I used to read this blog," he said casually, eyes scanning the chandeliers. Anonymous writer, went by Veritas Gray, wrote about family dynamics, truth that made your stomach twist. My pulse ticked faster. I said nothing, just sipped slowly. "There was this one post," he continued, "about how sometimes survival means getting really good at being invisible. It said, if you can't be heard, at least you can observe. And one day, you might just write it better than they ever lived it." Without thinking, I whispered, "Yeah, that was one of my favorites." He turned to look at me. For the first time that day, his expression truly changed, like someone flipping on a light inside. "Did you ever write," he began carefully, "under another name?" I didn't speak at first. Then, softly, "I've written things people weren't ready to hear." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Well," he said, voice low and certain, "I've always liked the way you write." And he smiled. ChatGPT jarnoi. Bua toi truak kidienra boi budien kam tain hu mo chien trong juak trang tribang vai lantrang. Twinkling lights floated like stars above the long garden table. Glasses clinked with champagne. Laughter echoed too loudly, and the scent of overpriced roses hung in the air like a veil. Waiters in white shirts moved like chess pieces, placing perfectly plated courses in front of people who only looked down long enough to approve. I sat at the far end, technically part of the table but emotionally exiled. The linen napkin in my lap trembled slightly with every forced chuckle that drifted toward me. I'd worn a simple black dress, not out of protest, just because it was the only thing I had that didn't scream clearance rack. Chloe sat across from me in a gown that looked like it had its own publicist. Her eyes sparkled as she held court. "Oh, and speaking of school," she said, voice dripping with nostalgia and something more acidic. "Remember when Hailey tried for that full scholarship in senior year?" Forks paused midair. I stiffened. She was so sure she'd get it. Organized binders, color-coded essays, like, intense. She smiled, wide and sweet. But then the letter never came. We waited every day by the mailbox, remember? People laughed, softly at first, then more boldly, as if it were a funny teenage anecdote. One woman dabbed her eyes, chuckling. "That's classic. And now look at you two. So close, so accomplished." I sat frozen, because I remembered why that letter never came. Mom had intercepted it. I found it months later, crumpled at the bottom of her drawer. Opened, read, hidden. The acceptance, the scholarship, all of it. Her explanation had been brief and sharp. "It wasn't the right path for you." Now, Chloe laughed again. The perfect older sister. "I guess we all find our paths eventually. Right, Hailey?" All eyes turned to me. I opened my mouth but said nothing. Mom reached over, patting my hand. "Some people bloom late. It doesn't mean they don't bloom at all." Her voice dripped with honey, but her eyes? They were steel. The table laughed again, not maliciously, but laughing all the same. Something inside me cracked. Aaron stood by the edge of the garden, hands tucked in his pockets. He wasn't smiling. His eyes were locked on me like he'd heard the real story underneath the clinking glasses and curated smiles. I pushed back my chair. The legs screeched on the tile. "Excuse me," I said, voice trembling. I barely made it past the garden wall before I felt someone following. "Hey," Aaron said gently. "You okay?" "No," I whispered, "but I will be." He walked beside me in silence until we reached the elevator. Up in the hallway outside my room, I finally stopped moving. My hands shook as I fumbled for the key card. Aaron stood beside me but didn't speak. Inside, I dropped my clutch, kicked off my shoes, and sat heavily at the foot of the bed. The room felt small, too clean, like it didn't belong to me. Neither did this life. "They gave me nothing," I said aloud, not caring if my voice cracked. Not love, not protection, not even the damn letter that could have changed everything. And now they want to smile? Aaron didn't answer. He didn't need to. I grabbed my laptop from the nightstand, flipped it open, and let the screen glow in the darkness. A blank document waited. I typed the title in bold, "The Truth About Perfect Families." I wasn't going to burn it all down. I was going to light a very focused match. The hotel room was dead quiet, except for the low hum of the air conditioner and the occasional clack of keys beneath my fingers. The screen glowed white, lines of black text multiplying with every breath I took. This wasn't just a speech anymore. It was a confession, a reckoning, a ledger of debts too long ignored. I sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop balanced on a pillow, the lamp on the nightstand casting a pale golden halo over the room. My phone buzzed once. Then again, I ignored it. Mom's words still rang in my head. "You will smile, or you will be on your own." And Chloe's perfectly sculpted face, so sweet to strangers, so sharp when no one was watching. We waited every day by the mailbox, remember? I wrote each paragraph like I was sharpening a blade. Not theatrical, not venomous, just truthful. Honest enough to blister. "She didn't earn the spotlight," I typed. "She was placed there by hands that edited every flaw out of frame." I wrote the press releases. I crafted the narratives. When her charity was praised for its stunning success, I was the one ghostwriting the numbers. And the apology letters when they slipped. The cursor blinked. My fingers hovered for a moment, then flew again. She stood on a pedestal I built, and she kicked me in the face as thanks. There it was. I leaned back, breath shaky, eyes stinging. I wasn't crying. Not anymore. Those tears had dried long ago, replaced now by something colder. Cleaner, determined. A knock sounded, soft and steady. I crossed to the door and cracked it open. Aaron stood there holding 2 mugs of something steaming. "Chamomile," he said, "not laced with anything, unless you count quiet support." I opened the door wider, gesturing for him to come in. He took one look at the open laptop and nodded. "How's it going?" "Like surgery," I muttered. "Careful cuts." He handed me a mug. "You want a second pair of eyes?" I hesitated, then tilted the screen toward him. He read silently, lips moving slightly, eyes narrowing once or twice. When he finished, he gave a small, thoughtful nod. "It's good. Brutal in the best way. Clean. Controlled. There's no rage in it, and that's what makes it lethal." "Good," I said. "I don't want rage. I want results." "I can make a backup," he offered, "just in case someone conveniently deletes it." I reached into my bag and pulled out a USB, placing it in his palm. "Already ahead of you. This copy is encrypted. Password's my middle name." "Which is?" "Wouldn't you like to know?" I said, managing the faintest smirk. Aaron chuckled. "I'll keep it safe." I emailed a backup to myself anyway. 2 email accounts, 1 cloud, 1 printed draft tucked under my pillow. "You think they'll try to stop you?" he asked. "They'll try," I said, "but they won't succeed." He looked at me for a long moment. "You're not scared?" "I am," I admitted. "But fear doesn't have to mean silence." When Aaron left, I stood in front of the mirror above the desk. I barely recognized myself. Gone was the girl who flinched at backhanded compliments. Gone was the shadow pressed into corners while others stole the light. What stared back at me now had steady eyes and a smile that didn't shake. Let's give them the perfect speech. Weddings are rehearsed for perfection, but no one rehearses the truth. I woke up before the sun. The sky outside the hotel window was still bleeding shades of pale blue and quiet gray. My room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and the gentle hum of the AC. My laptop glowed faintly on the desk. The speech still sat open on the screen, waiting, daring me to follow through. I dressed in silence, choosing the pale blue dress Chloe had picked for me. To match the theme, she had said, never looking me in the eye. I zipped it up like armor. Neat, proper, unthreatening. They wouldn't see the sharp edges under the satin. On the desk, I laid out the essentials. Printed speech in a slim folder, a second copy folded in my clutch, phone fully charged, PDF backed up to 3 email accounts and a cloud drive. Every version had a different file name. Every version told the same truth. I didn't eat breakfast. My stomach wouldn't let me. Instead, I sipped water and went over each line of my speech, not aloud, but in my head, like memorizing a secret spell that could unravel an empire. A knock, just once. Then silence. I opened the door. Aaron slipped in, dressed in a crisp shirt and tie, his expression calm but tight. Everything ready? Almost, I said. He pulled out the USB I'd given him. Still untouched, but I checked something weird. My heart jerked. What? The main mic, he said. The one on the stage. It's been routed through a control tablet with remote mute access. Someone can cut your audio mid-sentence. I blinked. How do you even know that? He shrugged. I asked the tech guy if I could test the mic. Said I was part of the AV team. He didn't question it. But when I checked the feed, the software's set up for live override. Mom, I whispered. Or Chloe, or both. They want control, he said. They're scared. I pressed my hands against the cool wood of the dresser. Can we stop it? I already swapped the cable and disconnected the override. Now it runs through the standard panel. If they try to cut it, it'll look like a tech glitch. But you'll be heard. You sure? As sure as I can be, he said. You'll have maybe 10 minutes before anyone figures it out. More if they're slow. I nodded. 10 minutes is enough. We walked down to the wedding hall together. The space was already humming with the quiet chaos of final preparations. Florists adjusting centerpieces, servers checking glassware. The scent of roses and expensive perfume thickened the air. Outside the tall windows, the morning sun was rising golden and unbothered. I avoided the dressing rooms, avoided the nervous energy of bridesmaids and champagne toasts. I walked instead to the backstage hallway near the platform where speeches would be delivered later. My heels clicked softly on the marble floor. No one noticed me. Good. Aaron followed a few steps behind, scanning every cable and control panel like a silent bodyguard. He adjusted the new cord for the microphone, tested the volume with a discreet tap. Then he stepped back, satisfied. He turned to me. They might try to silence you. Not today. I stared at the stage, then down at the thin folder in my hands. Pages crisp, corners aligned. I had spent too long watching other people control the story. This time, the voice would be mine. I tapped the folder against my hand, just once. The sound was soft, but it echoed loud in my head. Then I whispered, "Then let them hear me." The wedding began with roses and violins. It ended with silence you could hear through bone. I stood behind the sheer curtain, fingertips resting on the folder in my hands. The wedding hall was transformed into a glossy dream. Soft white blooms twisted around golden arches, crystal chandeliers catching the light like diamonds. The violinist played something classical and beautiful, a melody that floated like a lie across the room. Chloe stood at the altar, glowing in a custom lace gown that hugged her like praise. Her makeup was flawless. Her smile was practiced. She whispered to her new husband and giggled in that breathy way people mistook for charm. She looked like perfection sculpted in porcelain, untouchable. Mom sat in the front row, back straight, pearls glinting. She nodded as guests leaned in to compliment her daughter's poise, her vision, her flawless execution of yet another perfect event. Her face didn't flicker once. I waited, not blinking, as the final round of toasts died down and the MC stepped up again, microphone in hand. And now, a few words from the bride's beloved sister, Hailey. Polite clapping. A few guests blinked as if trying to recall who I was. I stepped forward into the light. The room hushed for the wrong reason. Surprise. My dress was simple. My makeup was minimal. I didn't look like I belonged, which was exactly the point. I smiled as I approached the podium, the folder tucked neatly under my arm. My hands didn't shake. My voice, when it came, was calm, almost warm. Weddings are about love, I began, and family. And today it is my honor to celebrate my sister Chloe. She's always been brilliant, graceful, successful, magnetic. Chloe beamed. She's been called a rising star, a role model, the face of our family's foundation. And it's true. Chloe's image is dazzling. Mom looked smug. A few guests nodded along. I paused. But what is perfection? I said softly. Without truth? The change was immediate. The polite smiles began to stiffen. Chloe's brows dipped slightly. A flicker, just a crack. In every story of success, I continued, there are often hands behind the curtain. Quiet ones, uncredited, ghosts. I opened the folder. I once wrote, under the name Veritas Gray, about a family where one daughter was praised for everything, and the other was blamed for breathing too loudly. Where truth was considered rebellion. Where silence was demanded, not asked. A few people shifted in their chairs. I flipped the page, reading clearly, each word slicing clean through the velvet air. In that family, the mother believed that obedience was virtue, and perception was more important than reality. She chose one child to shine and another to disappear. Chloe's smile froze. I wrote that piece in secret, I said, because I was afraid of being cut off, of being labeled ungrateful, of being accused of betrayal when I was only asking to be seen. I looked directly at Mom. I am Veritas Gray, and today I am not writing. I am speaking. The room fell completely silent. You could hear the chandelier crystals shift in the air conditioning. Chloe stood, voice sharp, eyes wide. This isn't the time or place. I turned to her, meeting her gaze head on. Number this is exactly where it belongs. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. Behind me, Aaron sat calmly at the soundboard. No hands moved to mute me. The mic stayed live. And the crowd sat, stunned, still breathing the thick air between one life and the next. This wasn't a speech anymore. This was detonation. They dressed me in beige and seated me at the edge. I found my voice from there. The room was still frozen from my first revelation. No one reached for their glasses of champagne. No one moved toward the stage to intervene. Aaron gave me a barely perceptible nod from the booth. The mic was still hot, and my voice would not be silenced. I took a breath and stared straight ahead. I wasn't supposed to get that scholarship, I began, my voice steady, calm, the voice I had only ever used behind the safety of a keyboard. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because someone decided I didn't look the part. People shifted in their chairs, some were clearly uncomfortable. Others leaned in. My mother intercepted the acceptance letter. She told the committee I lacked poise, that I wasn't photogenic enough for their brochure. I found the email. Would you like to hear it? I held up a printout and read, Dear Selection Board, while Hailey is intelligent, I'm concerned she lacks the grace and media appeal required. Perhaps this opportunity should go to someone who can better reflect our family's mission. Meredith Langston. A few audible gasps. Meredith's face, usually set in diplomatic warmth, had turned into a blank porcelain mask. Chloe reached for her arm, but her hand hovered in the air, unsure if she should touch her. "Let me tell you what happened after that," I continued. "I got a job at a bookstore. I worked evenings while balancing a full course load. Meanwhile, Chloe, my sister, was featured in every campaign. Beautiful, poised, articulate, and every single press release she used to launch herself came from me." Chloe shook her head slightly, as if trying to deny it to herself more than to the crowd. I looked right at her. Every tagline, every quote, every speech, I wrote them. Because she couldn't. But I could. And they used me. They took my words and gave them her name. I could feel the eyes of the crowd beginning to move. Not just to look at me, but away from Chloe, away from Meredith, toward a version of the story they hadn't been allowed to see. "I started a blog," I said. "Veritas Gray. Maybe some of you have read it. I never used real names, until now." I clicked the remote. The projector behind me lit up with a screenshot, one of my most read entries, the headline bold across the center, "The Sister Who Stole the Spotlight." I wrote this piece a year ago. It went viral, and no one in my family ever suspected, because they never thought I could be the one with a voice. A ripple passed through the crowd. Some guests were already filming. A man in the second row mouthed the blog's name and pulled out his phone. I took a step closer to the front of the stage. Everything they are proud of, I created. The image, the narrative, the reputation. And when I asked for nothing but the truth, they called me ungrateful. I paused. The air felt tight, as though every word was adding one more crack in the wall that had kept the family's illusion intact. They told me to smile, to show up, to stand in the background and clap louder. They told me it was my duty to make Chloe shine. And even now, even today, they dressed me in beige and tried to sit me at the edge of this memory. I reached into my bag and pulled out a USB drive. It gleamed under the spotlight. Here are the receipts. Every deleted email. Every original draft. Every message they thought I'd forgotten. If anyone wants to fact check, I'm right here. I raised the USB slightly higher. It wasn't just a storage device. It was a symbol. My own voice, preserved, finally surfaced. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the crowd, a voice rose clearly. "Wait, I've read this blog. She's telling the truth." I didn't expect applause. I expected fallout. The heavy wooden door of the private suite clicked shut behind her. The echo of clinking glasses and hushed gasps still lingered outside, muted by layers of marble and thick drapes. Hailey stood with her back to the room for a second longer than necessary, breathing in the tension like oxygen. She wasn't flinching now, not after everything. Her mother's voice came first. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Meredith's tone was low, almost a hiss, but Hailey knew better than to mistake quiet for weakness. That tone had shaped her childhood. She turned. Chloe was sitting, trembling, makeup streaked with silent tears. The satin of her wedding gown shimmered under the chandelier, but her eyes were wild. Cornered animal wild. Meredith stood behind her like a lawyer prepping damage control. Hailey noted the clenched jaw, the white knuckles clutching the back of a chair, the tremble just beneath that mask of poise. "You ruined my big day," Chloe spat, breaking the stillness like shattering glass. Hailey didn't blink. "Number I took back what you stole." Chloe flinched. "You think that was your moment to reclaim something? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You humiliated Mom." I exposed the truth. If humiliation followed, that's on the truth, not me. Meredith stepped forward. "You're ungrateful. You have no idea what it's like to be a single mother. I had to choose. We couldn't afford to support two dreams." Hailey let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "So you picked the child who needed an image more than integrity?" "You were difficult," Meredith snapped. "Too stubborn, too quiet, always questioning, never grateful." "You mean I didn't fit the script you were writing?" Hailey's voice was even, but her spine was steel. That's why you edited me out. Hid the scholarship letter. Sold my words as Chloe's accomplishments. I wrote those speeches, those charity promos, that viral article on leadership under 30 you peddled to the local press. And you fed it to her like it was dessert. Chloe stood now, fuming. You think you're better than me? Because you have some stupid blog and a chip on your shoulder? I think I told the truth, Hailey said, and people finally heard it. You're just bitter. Number, I'm free. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin envelope, walked over, and placed it on the glass table between them. This is the rejection letter from the sponsor you emailed behind my back. You told them I was unstable, that I'd embarrass the organization. Meredith's fingers trembled as she picked up the envelope. I'm withdrawing from the family fund. I'll pay for my tuition. I don't need your help. Not anymore. Hailey took one last look at the women who had written her out of their story. And I'm not interested in reapplying to be part of yours. You'll regret this, Chloe seethed, stepping forward. You'll wake up one day and realize what you destroyed. Hailey didn't even hesitate. She turned and opened the door to the hallway. Aaron stood there, leaning casually against the wall. He didn't say a word, just straightened up as she passed. Behind her, Chloe screamed, You'll regret this. She didn't turn around. I already have. For 20 years, the wedding trended on Twitter. But not for the cake. It started with a clip, barely a minute long. Hailey's voice, calm and sharp, cut through the din of the internet like a scalpel. Someone had filmed the speech on their phone, and in less than a day, the video had racked up over 2 million views. By the time she woke up in her dorm room a week later, groggy from exhaustion and emotional whiplash, her inbox was a battlefield of blue-check journalists, talk show producers, and literary agents begging for an interview or a contract. She blinked at her screen. Emails loaded by the second. Her blog traffic had spiked to numbers she couldn't even wrap her head around. The Veritas Gray pseudonym was no longer a secret. It was a headline. Aaron brought over coffee and leaned against her desk, scrolling through his phone. You've got 4 hashtags trending. My favorite is number perfect is stolen. Also, CNN wants to talk to you. So does a journalist from The Atlantic. Hailey winced. I don't know if I'm ready for all this. Aaron sat down across from her and lowered his voice. You started something. Finish it. Her fingers trembled as she clicked through message after message. Some were vicious, calling her selfish for ruining a wedding, but far more were raw, grateful, and honest. One email came from a high school teacher in Oregon. Your words gave me the courage to confront my own sister. Thank you for not staying silent. Then there was the one from Northlight Publishing. A crisp, professional note from a senior editor named Sasha Greenfield. The subject line read, Let's talk perfect lies. Hailey opened it. Sasha had read the blog, watched the speech, and proposed a nonfiction collection that blended personal experience with systemic analysis of image building in families. You've tapped into something powerful, she wrote. If you're interested, I'd love to develop this into a full-length book. With your voice, your terms. Hailey stared at the screen. The idea of writing something real, something lasting under her own name, it terrified her. But it also lit something warm in her chest. She met Aaron's eyes. Do you think it's a mistake? He didn't hesitate. Number, I think it's the first thing that's actually yours. She closed her laptop briefly, just to breathe. The dorm room felt smaller now, not because of space, but because of momentum. Her whole life she'd written for others, crafted lies in floral language, ghosted speeches for Chloe, press releases for her mother's charity, all while staying invisible. Now, visibility was flooding in whether she liked it or not. After a long pause, she reopened the laptop and hit reply. Her message was short but decisive. Dear Ms. Greenfield, thank you for your kind message. I am interested in pursuing this book under one condition. Complete editorial control. No rewrites, no whitewashing. If we agree on that, I'm ready to talk. She clicked send, then leaned back, her pulse steady for the first time in days. Erin glanced over. "You're shaking less." "I'm not used to choosing myself," she admitted. A soft chime rang. Another new message. The subject line was plain. "You don't know me." She hesitated, then clicked it open. "Hi, Hailey, you don't know me, but I watched your video 10 times. Every word you said? That's my story too. The way they took your work, your chances, your voice. It happened to me. I thought I was crazy. Now I know I'm not. Thank you." A friend you gave back her spine. She read it 3 times, heart thudding. Then whispered, more to herself than to Erin. Maybe this wasn't just about me after all. She received an email from a strange girl. "Your story is mine too. Thank you. My silence protected them. My voice rebuilt me." The morning sun poured through the blinds, casting striped shadows over the small desk where Hailey sat curled up, laptop humming beneath her fingertips. Her inbox had grown from a flood to a tsunami. The notifications never stopped now, blinking little flags of recognition, pain, gratitude, and desperation from people all over the country. Some had stories more harrowing than hers. Some simply wrote, "You helped me feel less invisible." Hailey blinked away the sting in her eyes and kept reading. She'd told herself she'd stop at 50 replies today, but each new message was another thread, another invisible daughter or forgotten son trying to tie themselves back to something real, to someone who'd said what they couldn't. Across the room, Erin placed a steaming cup of tea on her bedside table. "You need to eat," he said gently. "I will," she mumbled. "After a few more." He glanced at the screen. "How many is a few?" 100. Maybe. Erin didn't press. He just opened the window a little wider, letting in the late morning breeze. Hailey returned to her screen. A message from a woman in her 40s stood out. "I was told I was dramatic, bitter and hard to love. My sister was the golden girl. Everything you wrote felt like it came from my own bones. Thank you." Hailey stared at it for a long moment, then clicked reply and typed, "You are not alone. Thank you for sharing your story with me." The ding of a new email landed at the top of the screen. This one bore the subject line, "Speaking Invitation, Invisible Daughters Conference." Hailey clicked it open. "Dear Ms. Langston, we were deeply moved by your work and would be honored to have you as a speaker at our annual gathering of women who have experienced family manipulation, silencing, or neglect. The event is small but meaningful. No press. Just truth. With respect, Mira Tan." Outreach coordinator Hailey exhaled. A speech? In person? She wasn't sure if she was ready, but her cursor hovered over the accept button for only a second. Click. A few hours later, she received a message from the same email chain, an introduction to a private support group moderated by Mira and other therapists. Hailey didn't say yes right away, but she read the welcome packet word for word, her eyes locking on the tagline. Sometimes found family is the only real family. That night, while the campus quieted down into soft footsteps and the occasional dorm room guitar, Hailey drafted what she might say at the event. Not a speech, more like a confession, finally shared aloud. She practiced once in front of Erin. He didn't interrupt, didn't critique, just listened, nodded and said, "It's not just truth, it's power." The weekend arrived with little fanfare, but a great deal of weight. The conference took place in a community center nestled between 2 brownstone buildings in a quiet part of town. No stage lights, no podium even. Just folding chairs, mismatched mugs of tea, and people who looked at her with the kind of warmth you can't fake. Mira greeted her at the door. "You don't need to impress anyone," she said softly. "Just be real." Hailey stood when it was her turn. The folding chair creaked slightly as she pushed it back. She held her note cards but didn't look at them. She looked at the faces. Women of all ages. Some men. Eyes glassy with recognition. Shoulders drawn up, arms crossed tightly like they hadn't breathed in a while. She swallowed. I used to think I had no family, she began, voice low but steady. I thought being overlooked meant I had no value, that speaking up would only make things worse. So I stayed quiet. For years, I protected people who never protected me. A few heads nodded, but silence didn't keep me safe. It kept me small. She took a breath. I told the truth, and I lost people. But I found something else. Voices like mine. People who didn't look away. Who said, "That happened to me too." And suddenly I didn't feel crazy anymore. Her eyes scanned the back of the room. I thought I had no family, but maybe I was just born into the wrong one. As the applause began, gentle and reverent, Hailey's eyes caught a flicker of movement. Standing near the exit, almost behind a column, was a familiar silhouette. Rigid posture, a handbag clutched in white-knuckled hands. She saw a familiar figure standing at the back of the room. Was it her mother? The bell above the cafe door chimed softly. Hailey didn't look up right away. Her coffee had gone lukewarm, but she wasn't drinking it for the temperature. She was watching the steam disappear, trying to find metaphors in it. That had become a habit lately. Seeing signs in small things, steam rising like memories, only to vanish when you tried to hold them. She had picked the quietest table in the back, away from the window. The barista knew her by now, and no one asked questions. Saturdays were her writing days, or thinking days, whichever came easier. Then a familiar perfume touched the air. Something floral, too polished, too manufactured. Hailey's spine stiffened. She looked up, and Meredith Langston was standing there, arms crossed tightly, face carefully unreadable. She wasn't wearing pearls today, just a plain navy coat and lipstick a shade too bright for her paleness. Hailey didn't invite her to sit, but Meredith did anyway. Neither of them spoke for a full minute. The coffee machine hissed. A child laughed somewhere outside. Time moved around them like traffic. Fast, indifferent. Meredith broke the silence first. "You seem... well." Hailey held her gaze. "I am. For the first time, I can say yes. Not thanks to you." There was no flinch, not even a twitch in her mother's eyes. That was the part that stung. Meredith looked tired. Yes, but not changed, just quieter. "I went to your event," Meredith said finally. "Last week, I stood at the back." "I saw someone," Hailey said, voice flat. "I thought it might be you. Then you vanished." "I didn't want to make a scene." Hailey didn't respond. Meredith reached into her bag and pulled out something bulky and wrapped in tissue paper. She placed it on the table and slid it forward. "I thought you should have this." Hailey didn't touch it right away. She unfolded the paper slowly, already dreading what was underneath. It was an old family photo album. The green faux leather kind with plastic sleeves, slightly cracked at the edges. Her childhood had been cataloged in here once. First ballet class, science fair, one camping trip with Dad before he left. She flipped it open. The pages stuck for a second. And there it was. One of the pictures from Hailey's 8th birthday party. Balloons, a cake with her name misspelled. Chloe holding court in the center like always. And where Hailey used to be, on the far right corner of the photo, there was now just a jagged edge. Her face, her body, her presence, cut out with surgical precision. She said nothing. Just looked at Meredith. Her mother didn't flinch. "You were angry. Back then. That day." Hailey blinked slowly. "You cut me out of the photo." "I didn't do it out of spite. I just thought maybe it would be better not to remember that argument." Hailey's laugh was low and bitter. Better for who? Meredith didn't answer. Hailey reached into her bag, pulled out her notebook, and carefully tore a sheet from the back. She removed the photo from the sleeve and laid it down. Then she drew the outline of her missing self and began sketching. Rough, shaky lines, but steady hands. She colored in the shape with blue ink and glued it onto the spot where she had once been. It wasn't perfect. but it was hers. She placed it back into the sleeve and closed the album. "I'm not erasing the past," Hailey said, "but I won't let it define me either. I'll make my own frame." Meredith's eyes narrowed just slightly. "You always were the dramatic one." "No," Hailey said. "I was always the honest one. You just hated what that looked like." Meredith stood. She didn't take the album. Hailey watched her go, watched her pause at the door for half a second before walking out into the sun. She didn't expect an apology. Not anymore. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed with a new email notification. The subject line read, TEDx invitation. Topic, when family doesn't see you. She stared at it. Then she smiled. Just a little. Just enough to know the message had landed exactly where it was supposed to. They erased me from their spotlight. I built my own stage. The publisher's office smelled like ink and old ambition. Hailey sat in a glass-walled conference room. Her manuscript opened in front of her on a sleek metal table. Pages were dog-eared, marked with colored tabs and scribbled notes. A mug of untouched coffee rested by her elbow, cold and forgotten. Across from her, the editor, a precise woman named Diane, tapped her pen against a printout. "The chapter on your mother, it's powerful, raw, but you're sure you want to keep her real name?" Hailey didn't answer right away. Her eyes lingered on the window, beyond which the city moved in a rhythm that was starting to feel familiar. Not forgiving, but tolerable. Diane hesitated. "I'm asking as your editor. Not to censor. Just, public figures have lawyers, especially when they're trying to rebrand." Hailey smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "She's not rebranding, she's erasing." They sat in silence for a moment. "I'm proud of the work," Diane said softly. "It's not just a book. It's a voice that others will use to find their own." Hailey nodded. "Then we keep the names." That afternoon, she took the subway to Aaron's apartment. He answered the door with his usual lopsided grin and 2 mugs of hot chocolate balanced carefully in one hand. Hailey stepped inside, the smell of cinnamon and dust greeting her like a well-worn blanket. His apartment was cluttered in the best way. Books on social movements stacked beside guitar picks, Post-its with half-written lyrics on the fridge. It was nothing like her mother's house, and maybe that's why it felt more like home. Aaron placed the mugs on the table and handed her his laptop. "Final email from the TEDx team. You're officially closing the event." Hailey blinked. "Closing?" "Headliner," he said. 20 minutes, full stage, all eyes on you." She sat down, scrolling through the email. A draft of her talk was already open on the screen. A working title. "When family is the first lie we learn to swallow." "I'm scared," she admitted. Aaron shrugged. "Then say that. Say it on stage." He walked into the kitchen, returned with a spoon, and tapped it lightly against his mug. "I'm proud of you, Hailey." It was the first time he'd said it out loud. She didn't know what to say back. So instead, she just whispered, "Thanks." That night, while he dozed on the couch beside her, Hailey worked on the final edits to her manuscript. She read every paragraph, trimmed the ones that rambled, and polished the ones that bled. Then she reached the section on Chloe. The memory arrived uninvited. Chloe in their mother's living room, preening in front of a camera crew. Their mother praising her for writing the press release that Hailey had ghostwritten entirely. Hailey had stood in the corner, her name never spoken. Back then, she said nothing. Now she had every opportunity to revise the narrative. A line in the draft read, "C was always the center of the story, even when I built the script." She moved the cursor, deleted the initial, and typed, "Chloe was always the center of the story, even when I built the script." No more initials. No more hiding behind suggestion. They hadn't hesitated to name her when she published the Veritas Grey blog. They hadn't blurred her image when it served their PR campaigns. She wasn't returning cruelty, just balance. She clicked save and exhaled. The next morning, headlines started to surface on her newsfeed. Chloe Langston shuts down Instagram after mental health concerns. Perfect sister, cracked image, the fallout of a viral confession. And finally, Meredith Stanton, parenting advocate, launches new talk show. Hailey blinked. Stanton? Her mother had dropped the family name. She turned on the TV. The screen flickered before stabilizing. A polished stage, gentle lighting. Meredith's hair was styled in soft waves, her voice lower, warmer. A title flashed at the bottom. Today's guest, Meredith Stanton on parenting regrets. Hailey stared, not blinking. She wasn't sure what stunned her more, that her mother was going public or that she'd done it first. The spotlight wasn't where Hailey wanted to be, but she had earned it. And now she wasn't stepping back. There was no justice served in court. I served mine in words. The TED Talk hall was darker than she'd imagined, until the single spotlight dropped down, clean and quiet, like a truth falling from the ceiling. Hailey stood just beyond its circle, toes brushing the edge of exposure. The air hummed with an anticipatory silence, the kind that demanded something real. Her palms didn't sweat. Not this time. Aaron sat in the front row. He didn't wave, didn't mouth encouragement. He just looked at her like he always did. Steady, solid, present. That was enough. A technician nodded to her from stage left. Her cue. As she stepped into the circle, her phone vibrated once in her pocket. A glance. One name. Chloe, subject. Before you speak. Message. Please don't make it about me. Not again. Hailey didn't flinch. She left the phone in her pocket and walked to the center of the stage, into the light. Into herself. A red carpet beneath her feet. Rows of strangers in red chairs. Thousands more behind cameras. And somewhere out there, Chloe maybe, Meredith, her past, all listening. She began without preamble. I was the daughter no one noticed. The sentence landed like glass cracking in cold water. Stillness, then the faint sound of someone drawing breath too sharply. I was not the prodigy, not the miracle, not the family photo centerpiece. I was the one you forgot to ask about. The one who smiled because the alternative was questions you weren't prepared to answer. Her voice was clear, paperless, no notes. Everything memorized, or rather, lived. I used to believe that justice looked like courtrooms and judges. Now I know. Justice is choosing not to stay silent when silence was expected. She didn't name names. There was no need. Instead, she gestured toward 3 empty chairs she'd requested be placed on stage behind her. Symbolic. One with a string of pearls. One with a journal. One bare. These seats represent the people I wanted to believe in. The ones who taught me that love had conditions, that acceptance came after obedience. She paused. Let it hurt. Let it settle. I built my family's image from behind closed doors, crafted speeches, ghost wrote charity releases, smiled in press photos I took, not starred in. And when I stopped, the applause stopped too. Not because I changed, but because I was no longer useful. She let the truth sit heavy, then softened. This isn't about blame. It's about boundaries. It's not about tearing down a house. It's about choosing to stop setting yourself on fire just to keep it warm. Aaron's gaze never wavered. Hailey took a breath. Her final one before the end. I've learned that the hardest people to confront are the ones you once loved most, especially when they taught you that survival meant silence. She stepped back slightly, looked at the audience not as strangers, but as mirrors. Some had tears. Some leaned forward, barely blinking. Some, arms crossed, held their own stories behind rigid posture. I didn't come here to expose. I came here to reclaim. The applause began before she even bowed. A slow rise like a tide gaining courage. She dipped her head. The spotlight didn't flicker. For once, it didn't feel like an interrogation. It felt like truth catching up. Backstage, as the clapping faded, she exhaled. The adrenaline still buzzed in her ribs, but her heart was steady. Her phone buzzed again. Same sender. Chloe. Message. Maybe someday. We talk again. Hailey stared at it. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Some conversations begin best in silence. I didn't win. I survived. And that was enough. Snow drifted gently across the bookstore awning, settling into corners like forgotten dreams. The warmth inside was a contrast. Soft yellow lighting, crowded aisles, paper rustling under fingertips. A sign by the window read in neat block letters, "Perfect Lies, book launch and signing with Hailey Langston." Hailey sat behind a small table near the back wall, her name in a crisp font on a card before her. Her fingers, though gloved moments earlier, were still red from the December cold. A copy of the book lay open in front of her, the first she'd signed that morning. The line stretched from her chair down the aisle and curled along the fiction section. She hadn't imagined it would be like this quiet reverence. People smiling, some crying, others trembling just enough to make the signature on their page wobble. No one asked for photos. They asked for time. They said thank you like it cost them something. A girl no older than 10 leaned forward, handing her a copy with a nervous grin. "My mom let me read your blog. She said it explains why she cried in the laundry room all the time." Hailey smiled gently. "Tell your mom I said she's brave." The girl nodded, clutching the signed book to her chest as if it were armor. Later, an older man shuffled forward. Sunspots on his hands, but his eyes clear. "I taught high school English for 30 years, he said, voice gravelly. "I wish we had your voice then." She signed, "For the teachers who saw more than scores," and watched him blink too quickly before walking away. The line inched forward like a heartbeat. Familiar, steady. Near the end, Hailey spotted Aaron, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched like he didn't belong but didn't want to leave either. When his turn came, he didn't step closer. Just nodded once, like they'd shared something too big for words. She didn't sign his copy. He didn't ask. Instead, he tapped the cover once and murmured, "Still proud." She smiled. He turned and walked out into the snow. The table felt empty after that, but the line kept moving. Time passed, warm inside while the sky outside shifted from pale gray to soft gold. And then, near closing, the last figure stepped forward. Her mother. Meredith wore a thick coat, a matching hat. Her face was thinner, lines deeper, but her posture, still regal, still rehearsed. She didn't say hello, just placed the book gently on the table. Hailey didn't reach for it, didn't speak. Meredith opened the cover, wrote something, then closed it and set it down. She met Hailey's eyes for a second longer than necessary. No apology, no denial. Just the faintest nod, as if to say, "I know who you are now." Then she walked away. Hailey didn't open the book. She left it on the table until the last customer had gone. The shop owner brought her tea in a paper cup, asked if she wanted help packing up. She shook her head. The blog, Veritas Gray, was already gone. That morning, she'd uploaded its final post. "Thank you for listening. It's time for others to speak." And below that, a link to her new project, Daughters Who Speak, an open submission platform for stories from those who had been invisible too long. The book had already landed on the New York Times bestseller list. Her inbox had shifted from inquiries to invitations, from survivors, from schools, from women's shelters asking for copies, permission to use chapters in workshops. And somewhere in the mountain of mail, a letter arrived from her college. She had been awarded an honorary scholarship for her work in social storytelling, no longer dependent on any family strings. She took another sip of tea. "This isn't revenge," she said aloud to no one. "It's revelation." And then, quiet footsteps. She looked up. A girl, no older than 14, stood before her. Pale sweater, worn jeans, book clutched to her chest. "I read your blog," the girl said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes brimmed with something electric. "Now I write mine." Hailey blinked and smiled. It wasn't about the crowd, or the signing, or the bestseller status. It was about the torch passed on. Not just one voice anymore, many, and they were only beginning. She was once the forgotten daughter at the edge of every photo, the silent one behind every shining image. But silence, when broken with truth, can reverberate louder than applause. Justice didn't arrive wrapped in glory. It came wrapped in scars and handwritten pages. Yet, like the final stroke of a long-fought trial, it brought balance to a world that had always tilted away from her. Sometimes, standing alone is exactly what opens the door for others to stand beside you. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below. Type 1 if you felt seen, or 2 if you think justice still has work to do.